in Detroit, and this is Bloomberg.
Asia is at the forefront of some of the world's biggest stories. I'm Sherrian in Tokyo.
And I'm Heidi Stroud-Watts here in Sydney, where the trading day begins. We're here in the center of all the action to get you set up with the numbers, news, and knowledge you need for the day ahead.
The demand is indeed recovering.
We've been waiting for this moment.
The opportunity of a century.
Join us on Bloomberg Asia Trade, weekdays only on Bloomberg TV. Context changes everything.
Welcome back to our recap of Bloomberg Invest 2026. I'm Danny Berger. Just days before this event in New York took place, the U.S. began airstrikes on Iran, sending oil prices soaring and equities plunging. That added a new dimension of uncertainty to an already volatile macro outlook. It sparked conversations about the resilience of the global economy and how central banks may act to cushion the shocks.
The inflation data before Iran, I think, has suggested that inflation is running somewhere between 2.5% and 3%. I think housing inflation is trending down. I've got a lot of confidence in that. Core goods inflation has been trending up because of tariffs. Services inflation, I think, is slowly trending down, tied to the labor market. And the labor market is in a decent place, but showing some signs of softness. And so that's what gave me confidence that, hey, one cut later this year might make sense.
Now, the neutral rate, I don't know, well, tell us where you think we are compared to neutral, because the question I have is every SEP says that the Fed will hit its target 2 years from now.
I know.
The next SEP says 2 years from now. Are you ever going to really hit it?
Well, we have to hit it. And I think my colleagues and I are committed for the credibility of the institution and for anchored inflation expectations that we absolutely have to hit it. But where the neutral rate is has been a big question mark. Over the last several years, we kept forecasting that the U.S. economy is going to slow down, and then it just powered through. I thought when we raised rates as aggressively as we did, that we'd be slamming the brakes on the economy. We weren't. The economy proved to be much more resilient. In the face of tariffs, it created a lot of uncertainty, created a lot of noise, raised goods inflation went up, but the U.S. economy proved more resilient. And so the fact that the U.S. economy has been this resilient, given the stance of our monetary policy, tells me the neutral rate must be higher, at least in the near term. And the thing about the dot plot, which is, it's a very imperfect communication device. That long run dot is meant to represent where is the long run neutral after all of the shocks in the economy have passed and everything is settled back down to normal. That doesn't necessarily tell us that much about where is neutral today.
I think the market's reacting to every headline as it comes across. You're going to read how long is this conflict going to last? And the longer it does last, the impact to oil production and the energy transport could translate in terms of higher inflation or longer period of time. But our view still remains that, you know, it's a K-shaped economy here in the U.S. and that the lower income populations is where you're seeing lower wage growth, increased delinquencies, unaffordability. And so we still believe that, you know, the Fed should be in a position to be cutting rates rather than hiking rates. But it may take longer for that cycle to begin as we see what plays out.
I still think, actually, I would bet the Fed cuts 2 times. And I think they will look through this as long as it's contained to under, say, 3 months. But we'll see. I actually think they should also look through, in part, some of the AI boom, because whether rates are 50 basis points higher or 50 basis points lower, it's not going to impact the amount of CapEx that's going on there. And then under the surface, as I mentioned, financial conditions are tightening. I think the lower end consumer is struggling a bit, while overall consumer feels okay. And I think that's a hard dynamic to deal with.
What's fascinating is normally when people think, oh, there are going to be rate cuts, that's yay for risk assets, risk on. The scenario you're pointing is cutting rates for the wrong reason, which is actual weakness, true stress that you're seeing get into the market, whether it's a low-income consumer or whether it's these pockets of financial stress. Is that correct? Do you think that the rate cuts won't help add to risk appetite or could potentially be indicative of something more of a problem?
So a couple things on that. First of all, at a high level, I actually think the U.S. economy and the global economy is going to recent headlines notwithstanding, is going to grow higher than expectations. I do think inflation is moderating. And again, I think rates where they are modestly restrictive. So I don't think it's necessarily like a rate cut into a disaster. I think the Fed has room to lower rates. And in the context of everything going on, I think it would be smart of them to do.
Still to come from Bloomberg Invest, candid conversations about AI's impact on markets, companies, and the foundations of finance.
We're going through a technology cycle and a platform shift in the world that, and people typically don't like change.
This is Bloomberg.
My old mentor, Roger Staubach, who told me when I transitioned, football will never leave you, but you need to leave it.
Wow.
Everyone has a dream, and a lot of dreams are, my dream is to play football and play professional football, and you get the dream comes true, but it is going to end. And the day it ends, the day before it ends, you're one of the best in the world. Great. The next day you wake up, that's gone. What are you great at? And the truth is, nothing, right? I'm not great at anything else.
I talk about it all the time, Steve, is this whole idea of, is not from penthouse to penthouse. And what I mean by that is you played for 15, 20 years and you're in the penthouse. That doesn't mean that you come to the business world and you're going to be in the penthouse. You don't start on the third floor or the lobby. You actually have to start in the basement.
At 9:30 a.m., the market tells you what it's really thinking.
We beat the drum to the opening bell.
With deep analysis of the forces driving the price action.
Focusing investors on what really matters.
Where the money flows, which markets are changing.
Conversations with players shaping the narrative.
Innovative growth companies gravitate to NASDAQ.
It's not just like, let's buy the Mag 7 or AI.
That's a really compelling story.
This is where your trading day begins.
And this is Open Interest.
Only on Bloomberg.
Key investors, top executives, global innovators. Join me for in-depth conversations with the biggest newsmakers on the day's top stories. Insight with Haslinda Amin, only on Bloomberg.
Get your fixed income fix. Watch Bloomberg Real Yield around the world right here on Bloomberg. Context changes everything.
Welcome back to our recap of Bloomberg Invest 2026. I'm Danny Berger. For investors these days, AI is everywhere, driving huge amounts of spending, generating tons of buzz, and promising to transform companies and industries. It's inspiring excitement, but also skepticism. AI was a central theme of conversations at the conference.
We're going through a technology cycle and a platform shift in the world that, and people typically don't like change. And so when you go through a platform shift in the way that most businesses are going to operate and most things, there's going to be some level of disruption. And in this case, clearly the eye of the storm is software. And just like in almost every other cycle, I'd like to say that what I'm saying is new. It's not that new. MLPs had a really hard time in energy crisis. Any sector that goes through a platform shift, if you're overexposed, asset managers in that feel tremendous amounts of pain and you get exposed on the risk management side. And that's kind of what's happening, I think. it's early days. I don't, if the software, if the technology keeps getting better, I suspect it will not just be software, it will be services and other sectors that will get exposed. And one thing that's being missed by the private markets is we're doing stuff in funding the next 10, 15, 20 best companies in the world. Like it's not just all bad. We're funding 10 billion for SpaceX in terms of GPUs. We're funding Intel's fab. We're funding, Databricks. Like you talk about the single best companies that are being formed, and there'll be 10, 15 new trillion-dollar companies. Credit is the centerpiece of that.
I think you want to be concerned about these hot markets. This does remind me of when the internet bubble was booming at the turn of the century, and everyone wanted to buy the same .com companies. We think that's happening with these AI companies. Everyone is so excited about it, and the data centers are all the rage. Everybody wants to own a data center. Every real estate person I know, many public companies are investing in that way. So that would be a sector that I would be really concerned about, things that are really tied to AI and companies that are sort of, jumping into new industries for the first time because they think that's where the economics are going to be really positive. So I'd be very cautious of anything AI connected, especially companies that are really not truly world-class at it.
We've talked about the opportunity ahead within AI, but what are you most concerned about? Where are we going to see, it could be a pullback, concerns, or where you might be either looking at more skeptically or avoiding?
It's interesting. A lot of people are worried about a pullback or hiccups. And of course, when you're early in a technological transformation, you're going to have that. But one of the other risks that isn't talked about as much is what happens if everything moves really quickly, and what are the ripple effects of that? In fact, with what we've seen in just the last 2 to 3 months of agentic coding, I wonder if 2026 will be a year where the rest of the ecosystem around some of these AI transformations isn't going to be able to keep up. Will all parts of the supply chain be able to keep up? Will shifts in the labor market that need to happen be able to happen as quickly as they would need to be? Will regulatory frameworks be put in place in time? So it's interesting when you're moving at lightning speed and a trend is growing exponentially, sometimes the ripple effects or hiccups come from other parts of the ecosystem that just can't keep up in the near term.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think this is very real when I think about the big technology shifts over the last, my investing career. This is very, very real. The question is just time and distance, really, right? In terms of how does this all get absorbed? The market, I think, myopically focuses on specific questions and moments in time. Right now, it's about the return on all this CapEx, and the numbers are eye-popping, right? I mean, I think if we were sitting here 2 years ago and you said, we're going to be talking about $1 trillion of CapEx across a handful of companies, I think both of us would have said, you're crazy, that's never going to happen. But here we are, and the reason it's interesting now is because for a lot of these companies who are spending that capital, the threat is existential. If they don't win or stake out their place in this evolving ecosystem, there's risk to their core business in a very fundamental way.
Opportunities and challenges, risks and returns. A rich mix of information and insight flowed throughout the 2 days of Bloomberg Invest. To conclude our recap, here's what the CEOs of 2 major investment firms had to say about the conditions they and their clients are dealing with.
You expect bigger returns for taking bigger risk. And there are times that feel like a better time to take more risk and times when maybe not so much. How do you characterize the moment we're in right now?
So I think it's probably the most trying time to be a long-term investor. It really is, because if you're trying to invest for the long term, you're trying to invest through market cycles, and nowadays with the disruptive forces out there, what exactly is the cycle for your business model? Are you continually transforming your business model for that? And I think a lot of it depends on the industry, the company, the psyche of management and things like that. Even we as a shareholder, an investor, pushing for companies to continue to always be on the edge of transformation. And I think that is the biggest issue for us, as a long-term investor.
It feels like there are 4 simultaneous existential shocks and risks happening right now, whether it be how AI transforms our world, fears over credit, trade fears continue to crop up, and it's now war too. What is an investment committee like at KKR right now? There must just be so many risks that you're having to grapple with.
We're very calm. I think we're actually enjoying this period. Okay, so you got to focus on what you can control. Markets, actually, let's go further back. Human beings, and therefore markets, hate uncertainty, right? It's absolutely the case. And it's also the case that a number of people, most people that are investing seats for a long while, have PTSD from the financial crisis. And so everybody's trying to figure out what's going to trigger the next big downfall for the space, for you name it, for the economy, for the markets. We don't see a precondition for that as we sit here today.
That wraps up our look back at Bloomberg Invest 2026. You can find more of these conversations on Bloomberg.com and Bloomberg Live's YouTube channel. The Bloomberg Invest series heads to Hong Kong next in June. Thanks for watching. I'm Danny Berger, and this is Bloomberg.
A cidade estava sitiada.
Isso ao começo eu não sabia o que fazer.
Foi a mais terrível que eu passei na minha vida.
Eu temo, né, que o Brasil se torne, num futuro próximo, um narco-estado.
Porque no final, tudo é dinheiro.
People back home they are suffering, and someone is driving a Range Rover with their money.
Where is my money?
I think she's a scam up to now.
It's some of the world's most desperate people who are getting ripped off.
Repeat after me. I am a winner.
I didn't know how big it was. I didn't really understand what I was getting myself into.
If you tell me you have a vision of being $1 billion business, then you're going to have to do what it takes. And if you're not going to do that, everybody's going to suffer.
Nisho tanya ki kon ahna ta chuara panga ko ahna le pa manjang le nya ko mamanya.
Una batalla a muerte.
Money can do a lot of good. It can really transform people's lives, but it can also hurt them.
The phone is, what's great about it is it's a well-developed gaming ecosystem, right? So it, folks know to find games there, but it's also a highly competitive gaming ecosystem. So its developedness gives you both that upside and that downside. But what's exciting is that now we are moving beyond the phone to the TV. So I mentioned like one of the big gaming areas we're going after. One of the big gaming areas we're going after now is social gaming experiences that will show up on your TV. So we are now announcing, we're going to announce here actually, that we're going to have these social party games that you can play on your TV with your phone as the controller. And it's things like, recognizable games like Boggle, you got Pictionary, we've got a Lego party game. We, basically are going to like unleash this with a bunch of creators, and they're going to go figure out stuff that we didn't even imagine that they can do with that interactivity.
Bringing you the world's business and financial news whenever and wherever it happens. I'm Michael McKee at Mount Everest, and this is Bloomberg.
Middle East tensions are high.
Both sides willing to go back to the battlefield.
The narrative changes moment to moment.
Is there a ceasefire? Is there not a ceasefire? Markets are up, markets are down.
Count on Bloomberg for up-to-the-minute reporting.
Breaking news this morning.
Breaking news in the last few minutes.
On-the-ground perspective.
Talking to you from the bomb shelter.
This White House still pushing.
And the analysis you need to make informed decisions fast.
Clearly, nothing is final until it's well and truly final.
The really important question is whether we'll get second-round effects.
Nobody covers geopolitics like Bloomberg.
Bringing you up to them in the news whenever and wherever it happens. I'm Shevrian in Seoul, and this is Bloomberg.
we started a firm basically around what I learned in football and said private equity can be a place of abundance and makes no sense because it should be just transactional. It should be zero-sum game. You get what you get, I get what I get. But great business, the greatest businesses are the ones that have that heart, that feeling, that there might be other ways to make some money. That's fine with you. But to me, that's the way to make money and make it legacy.
There's no one quite like Steve Young. The NFL Hall of Famer who won 3 Super Bowls as a scrambling lefty quarterback is now making moves in private equity. Alex and I caught up with him in his office at HGGC. That's the $10 billion firm he created almost 20 years ago. We talked to him about ownership, risk, and why he thinks the PE business needs a new playbook. All right, so Steve Young, we often start this show by asking people to introduce themselves. How do you introduce yourself these days?
Well, most of everything's at home. I still have one that left in high school. My little daughter, Lila, kids in college, kids out of college, trying to get people launched. And so I was like, I would introduce myself as an aspirational dad right now and see if I can, get people launched.
So not 3-time Super Bowl winner, MVP, Hall of Famer, co-founder of a private equity firm, just aspirational dad.
Well, I think if you have, all politics are local, right?
Yeah.
If things are good at home, then things are going to be good everywhere else. And so for me, it was my old mentor, Roger Staubach, who told me when I transitioned, I said, how do you transition? He goes, you run. And I go, run where? He goes, run anywhere. Just get away from football because football will never leave you, but you need to leave it.
Wow.
And so I thought that was great advice because it's really true. Football never left me, but you need to leave the thing it's over. And I think that I don't want to drag it around. Everyone has a dream. And a lot of dreams are, my dream is to play football and play professional football. And you get the dream comes true, but it is going to end. And the day it ends, the day before it ends, you're one of the best in the world. Great. The next day you wake up, that's gone. What are you great at? And the truth is nothing, right? I'm not great at anything else.
I talk about it all the time, Steve, is this whole idea of it's not from penthouse to penthouse. And what I mean by that is you played for 15, 20 years and you're in the penthouse. That doesn't mean that you come to the business world and you're going to be in the penthouse. You don't start on the 3rd floor or the lobby. You actually have to start in the basement and humanize yourself and have the humility to start from the ground like you did in the minor leagues in baseball or football. And that's an interesting. I do have a question for you following up on what you just said. When you walk into an investor meeting or a company you're trying to buy, I find that sometimes being an athlete, the greater you are and even the more famous you are, that almost works against you. How have you dealt with that at all?
So it's funny, for the first 15 years of this private equity journey, I tried to avoid it. And I almost, and if it came up, I was fine. But I didn't, I wouldn't, if it didn't come up, I was fine with that too. And I realized over time that I was the one that was overwrought about it. I'm the one that's thinking about it. Like no one else. And I think it was an investor, and I'm not going to name the investor, but it was a big investor in one of our funds. And it was a big deal for us to get them in. And we finish. And he says, we're done. And he goes, you mind, there's one last thing I want to ask you. He's like, yeah. He goes, will you throw me a ball? Can we go out and have a catch? And I was like, I was taken back.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, we go have a catch. And that's when I was like, stop. Let's just, I played. It was great. If it's helpful, if it's useful to you in some way, let's talk about it all day long. But if it doesn't come up, let's talk business.
Yeah.
Because that's what's fun.
And so let's talk business. Let's talk about private equity because, as both of you know, I love private equity. I'm fascinated by it. But private equity is not for the faint of heart. I mean, I think you would agree, Alex, that you and I look at this industry together a lot. There are a lot of easier things you could have done.
Yeah.
Why private equity?
I don't know. I'll try to give the quick answer to that. I'd gone to law school while I played. I went to 3 Super Bowls while I was in law school in the wintertime. But it was really around getting ready for the transition. And so because of that, I thought I'd be a lawyer. But then I was asked to be on the board of Power Bar, which at the time was a meal replacement for marathoners out of Berkeley, California. But for me as a young, single guy, I was like, that's not meal replacement, that's dinner. And so we got famously friends, and he goes, look, join the board. On the board was Warren Hellman and Larry Sonsini, titans of Silicon Valley.
Founder of Hellman and Friedman.
And Larry Sonsini, Wilson Sonsini, the famous law firm. And I had a buddy who had started a business around an algorithm that back in the mid-90s, you could go in and fiddle around with URLs in the internet. And he said, figure out an algorithm that could localize the internet. Before everyone's time here, you remember when it's like you could put in Palo Alto or New York hammer and you'd get a USSR sickle. Like nothing made sense. And so I took it to him and said, look, this is not, and they realized, Steve, you're a businessman, you're not a lawyer. And so that transition, we built a business, and that's where I met Rich Lawson, my longtime partner, was building a business called Found.com.
Wow.
And we did it while I was finishing playing. And that's what started it. And one of our investors was Bain Capital and Bob Gay. And Bob saw what we were doing, and then he sponsored us, essentially sponsored me and Rich together to start a private equity firm. And that's how it transitioned. And so I started what is now HGGC, fifth fund, and, you know, $10 billion later.
Here you are.
Here we are.
So, Steve, I mean, if you think about 40 years ago, when Henry Kravis and Steve Schwartzman, and you start Blackstone and KKR and Carlyle with David Rubenstein, and so like the big top four, it was a very small industry.
Very small.
If you look 40 years now, you have
6,000
right?
middle market private equity firms.
So the competition is fierce. So when it comes to imposter syndrome, Hall of Famer, 3 Super Bowls, law degree, but now you're asking investors and institutions to invest in you and Rich, first-time fund, former football player. Describe how you felt when you were in this boardroom asking for money.
Early days.
The first days.
You know, it was interesting. We all agreed in 2008 that private equity was broken. You know,
wow.
I'd seen enough of private equity for 8 years to say, I have that opinion. And then others had been back in the KKR days and early Bain days and late 80s, early 90s, that like the middle market where the people are, Alex, it's like across the table is not some widget. It's you and me. Let's work it out. We got a business size that is really around. It's not a spreadsheet jockey kind of process. It's people, and we said we've lost that. And so in 2008 we started a firm, basically around what I learned in football, which Bill Walsh used to say. He wrote a book, my famous Hall of Fame coach. The score takes care of itself. In other words, yeah, we have to return money to you, but that score will take care of itself if we have those fundamental values of partnership and the athleticism to be great partners and use our intellect and our ability and our expertise. And so what I had to do, Alex, you say, as me coming out of a professional career and imposter syndrome, I need to get really smart people around me fast. Because I know it's not, if it's about me, we're in trouble. But the imposter syndrome sticks around.
Yeah.
I mean, I still think about sometimes I feel awkward and a little out of place. And I think that's my own weird insecurities. And I think, in a weird way, insecurities drove me as a football player. And in some ways, I think some of the insecurities drive me here. Just be completely authentic about it.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, it's hard to say, because I'd love to tell you I'm the king and get out of my way. And,
right.
But I think to be honest about it, the imposter syndrome is something that is around, and I don't know that it's completely gone.
Eternal life, a concept that has captivated the imagination of humans since the dawn of time. I'm David Rubenstein. The advances that have been made in science recently has made it possible for people to live much longer than they would have otherwise lived decades ago. With innovation exploding, it's harder than ever to know what's real and what's just hype. On longevity, I talk with the leading experts in science and medicine to educate people about how they might be able to change their conduct so that they can live a happier and healthier life.
It is at front and center of what we're trying to resolve and understand.
Americans need to know they are at risk of dying from the next pandemic.
What we really need in our lives is to build community.
Knowledge is power. The generation before us, cancer was considered a sign of weakness, and many never talked about it.
Longevity without health is not valuable, but if you can maintain health, people are productive when they're older.
Join me on a 4-part journey as I explore the great quest for longevity. Only on Bloomberg.
When news breaks,
a redhead across the Bloomberg terminal.
Bloomberg has you covered.
Trump's global tariffs are struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court.
For all the context and clarity you need.
There's going to be now tons of tariff headlines until midterm elections.
Hear it first on Bloomberg.
Bringing you up-to-the-minute geopolitical news whenever and wherever it happens. I'm Jennifer Zabasaja in the Lesotho Highlands, and this is Bloomberg.
You may not have an MBA from Harvard, and neither do I, but the MBA you got is 3 Super Bowls. To be in the middle of that huddle in a pressure situation in the Super Bowl with 150 million people watching, you're doing the same thing in a boardroom, right? Sending your message, here's the play, here's our strategy.
And it really is about people.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not good at that, it does devolve. It will, football is one in relationship. I gotta go back to Bill Walsh. He used to stand in front of the team the first day of training camp and say, I don't care what play we call, I don't care what defense we run, we will win because we have shared common experiences together and an element of love for each other.
Mm. Wow. Powerful.
And I was like, we all like, what did he just say?
Yeah.
That's insane. And so I go back to, the boardroom, the things that you hit it right on the head, the things that I had viscerally experienced, the stuff that I went through. It's a different, it's not a field, it's not a huddle, but it is the same drama.
Right. I mean, I've gotten to know you pretty well. Like, you have an ability to go pretty deep with people. Where does that come from?
Maybe it's my own vulnerability that I feel to myself. Like, if someone says I suck, I'm kind of like, I wonder. Let me look into that. You know what I mean? And I think that vulnerability makes me interested in what's happening around me. And I think I watch closely. When you play, and Alex, I don't know how you'd think about baseball, but football with a field, it's, there's 80,000 witnesses, there's a clock, there's a score, there's a play clock that you gotta go, and if you pay attention on the field, the human behavior that happens and to you and everyone else is the truth. You cannot lie. And so to me, I think whatever my vulnerability or my interest in it just got an expert jolt from playing all those years. Like I feel like every human behavior in the world today, I see the flaw.
I mean, did you have that experience? I mean, I'm fascinated by this idea of translation. Football's a different game from baseball. What are the things? What are the realities for you?
I mean, it's total transparency, right? Because every time you come to the plate, you're sitting in front of Yankee Stadium in front of 1,000 people. And all you got to look is that scoreboard. It's going to tell you what's your batting average, what are RBIs, home runs,
OPS,
everything. So you're either going to get cheered or booed, and it's immediate. And I think one of the advantages Steve and I have being former athletes is we have no problem saying, hey, that's my fault. And we get our butts kicked over and over again. In baseball, if you fail 70% of the time, you go to the Hall of Fame. So you almost have a PhD in failing. The key is that you have a master in getting back up. And I think we were talking a little bit about that earlier. A lot of people in business that all they've done is win, win, win. we're actually perfectly made for business because business is a sport of failure.
Well, yeah, I love that because in a way, if I could get all the guys that are out there going through that and learn, it's intuitive, right? It's you can't get into the pros and not have that happen to you. And if you could just be aware, self-aware as it's intuitive, but you're not necessarily aware of it. And if you could become aware of it and watch it and become it as a talent, you could be easily hireable. Like if you really take it in and you notice it and you pay attention to it, it's portable, 100% portable over into the, another practice, because it's people.
All right, so I want to introduce an on-the-fly segment that I'm going to call Asking for a Friend, because I really am asking for a friend. And this isn't sort of like, I'm asking for me. I'm actually asking for a friend. Steve, asking for a friend. If you were to, say, have just bought a couple basketball teams in the last few years, you're taking on the role as an owner for the first time. You've been an owner of your firm. What's the best advice you could give him?
Fascinating. Treat your position as highly fireable, even though it's not. You get inevitably a little lazy just because I'm safe.
You're
like
in
I could
charge.
make mistakes and and screw up. Well, I might get embarrassed. Someone might write a bad article about me, but I'm not at risk. Like I just feel like I want to walk around without the hubris that I own the place.
Wow.
Right? I mean, it's like, and I think people will feel, because you walk around with hubris, you own the place, everyone else is like, you do. So I'll bow, but it doesn't make me feel like I want to go fight.
Wow.
And I think that's super powerful. The other thing is one of the best things that ever happened to me when I was playing, I wasn't flailing around, I was playing pretty well, but Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan, the coach of the 49ers, stays his dad. He was a great coach of the Broncos, and he played the coach of the 49ers for me. He turned to me one day and he said, I'm a really aggressive play caller. And I think I spend so much time trying to make sure that I don't put you in a bad spot. But you know what? I start to feel like I'm holding you back. So I'm going to flip the script. And instead of holding you back, I'm going to empower you. You take care of me. Instead of me, coach, take care of you, you player, take care of me. I'm going to call as hard and fast as I possibly can. And if if there's a problem, you deal with it.
Wow.
And I remember feeling like this empowerment, this feeling like, I mean, I can still feel it in the back of my neck right now. Like, let's go do it. Let's do that. And then what came out of it was this acceleration. And so I guess my point is trust, like empower people to run ahead, not by the side and not from behind, but to go. And I've done this in business and especially in our firm. You're young, you haven't done it before, well, you're about to. And you know what? It might cost us in the short run, but running out and forcing you to kind of do hard things that are ahead of your time, you're going to find out, and we're going to find out really fast, and then we'll iterate.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean, it's just like, let's iterate, let's get fast, and that's how you empower people. You have to empower. That my coach empowered me. That's what it felt like. And then I was like unstoppable. And if you can get a team full of empowered people, you can't stop them.
Thank you for that advice. And that really means a lot to me. And I think it's funny how much alike we think.
No, we talked for a few minutes before. I'm like, we're
I know.
gonna turn to butter soon. We keep going around the circle.
I just want to take you to dinner and actually keep going because it was so good.
No, but I've loved what I watch you on baseball. I watch you in a lot of interviews and stuff. I know this is rattling around you're chewing on what I'm chewing on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I appreciate.
Trying to figure it out every day.
U.S. jobs numbers are released. Bloomberg has the report under surveillance with crucial data and expert analysis at terminal speed. Nobody covers Jobs Day like Bloomberg. The countdown is on. Everything you need to get the edge at the end of the market day. Get ahead of tomorrow's trading with The Close. Weekdays on Bloomberg. Context changes everything.
World's most powerful investors don't ring a bell. They quietly reshape entire industries. This is the money shaping the world. The Dealmaker playbook where power and billions of dollars change hands every day. From private equity and credit to venture capital and M&A, we bring you the inside scoop on the biggest deals and debates, plus exclusive conversations with finance's ultimate insiders. I'm Danny Berger, and this is Bloomberg Deals. Every week, only on Bloomberg Television.
The trading day is about to start.
And you're already looking for that edge.
The opening trade brings you everything you need to know as markets open across Europe.
Let's talk about the significant risk transfers to find space in their balance sheet.
Hedging some of that risk.
You could look at it the other way. Obviously, this stuff is risk-weighted.
I would much rather be long than be short.
We're in a kind of sweet spot.
Very, very strong alignment.
3 revolutions in one.
I'm Guy Johnson.
I'm Anna Edwards.
I'm Tom McKenzie.
This is your opening trade.
Every trading day, only on Bloomberg.
Question for you is, I played for several amazing owners. 2 of them are George Steinbrenner and Hal Steinbrenner. They were both great, but different. And both had big impacts in my life and my business life. Talk a little bit about DeBartolo and also Bill Walsh. What did they mean to you, and what made them so good?
Eddie DeBartolo is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame as an owner. He's in there for a lot of reasons, but to me, the main reason is he was the first equity owner of a professional football team, for sure, that looked at the players as partners. Everything else, all I'd ever known was, and I'm going to conflate it, but it was chattel. And so I think he saw us like, you're my partner, and we're in this together. And I think that's the empowerment, right? It's like, I own the team, and it's in a drawer somewhere. I got a piece of paper that says I own it.
Right.
But I don't pull it. I put it in the drawer, and I don't really pull it out. And you know what? Don't make me pull it out. Because I want you to know that, and his question was always, I want you to be champions. What do you need? And so whatever it was, we'd list it, and then you know what he did? He held us accountable. Like, I gave you everything you needed. Where is it? And if we came up short, it was like, we didn't get it done. And so we'd have a little,
There'd be a discussion.
But it was like, you talk about empowerment, I always felt like we were in it together. And I think that's a super powerful feeling from an owner.
Yeah.
That's unusual. And then Bill only accentuated that. He was somebody that was worried in 1987, 1992. He was worried about hydration and nutrition and sleep and mental health. And not only was the West Coast offense he was ahead of time in everything.
Wow.
They're both one of one.
Yeah.
And I ran into both of them. And it's a miracle. It's how many athletes that I know, amazing athletes, never ran into someone like that. Either a coach or an owner, and really toiled in general anonymity because they got to a place that could be like that.
And just to chew on that, because I'm obsessed with like great coaching and great leadership. Bill Walsh, I've admired for a long time.
Yeah.
Back when you played, he's
all of that.
Was it that he was just a great visionary, a great offensive mind, a great connector, EQ? What was his greatness?
Okay, all of that. But I'm going to give you, I joined the team, first meeting, he's talking about love and everything. Someone's over in the corner with a big camera filming and walking around, following him down the hall, out to the practice field. And I'm like, what is this? You know, are they doing a museum or what, you know, what is this? Because he's already won Super Bowls. He's like, maybe there's, I don't know, a documentary. And no, he was, it took me some time to figure it out, but he was developing what was a repository, like a physical box of everything that he was, to all the EQ, all the speeches, all the installation, all this, anything that he'd ever done. I want it to be in a place where I could hand it to my assistant coaches, because my assistant coaches aren't getting head coaching jobs, and I want them to thrive. And so he handed it to Mike Holmgren as he went to Green Bay.
Wow.
He handed it to Mike Shanahan as he went to the Denver Broncos. And he handed it to many others. And he's basically saying at the height of his career, here's everything that I am. Here's all my proprietary knowledge. It's 3 generations ahead of everybody. We had a tactical advantage for 20 years.
Yeah.
Right? And he's handing it out. And both those guys told me that as he left, as they were leaving with this box of stuff, he said to them, I'll see you in the championship game. And we did.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then sometimes they beat us. Like, what are we doing? He goes, Steve, I knew I had a tactical advantage, but I knew it was going to be it's like a glide slope. It's not going to stay the same. It's going to wane. So as it settles, if I don't reinvent myself off of me, and I knew if I handed it to him, they'd sharpen my saw.
Right.
I was like, that's abundance.
And so, I know you think a lot about this, Steve, and Alex does too. What's the version of that you use in your current life? What is the spirit of abundance? What is the focusing on the transition?
Really easy.
What does it look like?
Think about transaction. Think about the roots of private equity we're going to make a deal, right? And if the deal sits as a spreadsheet in front of you, but there is a way to now take that as a base of transaction and create a space where we start to look at the full measure of what you'd like to do and the full measure of what the restrictions and the abundance of what we can do, and let's see if we can find ways together. And it's aspirational. You have to do it every day. You have to talk about it every day. You have to believe it every day. You have to go into the relationship that way. When things get tough, you got to remind yourself that that's what it is. And so I've taken from my previous life and said, private equity can be a place of abundance, and makes no sense because it should be just transactional. It should be zero-sum game. You get what you get, I get what I get. But great business, the greatest businesses are the ones that have that heart, that feeling, that there might be other ways to make some money. That's fine with you, but to me, that's the way to make money and make it legacy.
As we wrap up, Steve, I did want to ask you, and this is very much of a piece with what we're talking about. Your dad, who I think just recently turned 90. Grit. Grit Young. One line that you've talked about many times that I never forget is, you told him you wanted to play in the NFL, and he said, that's the dream.
That's a wonderful dream, son. Less than 1% chance, but everyone needs a dream. Hold on to it. But what's the plan?
What's the plan? So I'll turn this on you now. As you think about this point in your career, you've got multiple partners now in this firm. As you think about this moment for you in this firm, in private equity, what's your dream and what's the plan?
My dream goes back to my children. I think it's like I really do want to pay it forward. My dream is, and I think I asked my dad the other day, because he bothered me all my life. What's your dream? He told me 110. So I guess my dream is 110.
I'm sorry. What is 110?
110 years old.
Oh,
I believe.
I like that. I like that. I love
Sorry
that.
about that. You're not old enough to think about that.
Yeah, exactly.
About 10 years, you'd be like, I know it 110.
Yeah, exactly. He's like 110%. I love that. I'll always give 110%. No, 110 years.
Old.
Yeah. All right, Steve Young, this has been a treat. I've been looking forward to this.
I can't wait. This, I mean, I feel like you guys came to talk to me. I want more conversation with you guys. Really.
Anytime.
I want to stay connected to you, Alex. I think you and I are chewing on a lot of the same stuff.
I love what you're doing. I have a tremendous amount of respect and admiration for you.
Me too.
You don't think the court was hurt by the perception that it was a political decision?
The court's always hurt, it seems to me, if we look political. One of my concerns, my present-day concerns, is there's too much partisanship. It's true historically that most presidents have appointed justices to the Supreme Court who are members of their own party. The partisanship should not be an overriding factor. What you look at is temperament, learning, background, reputation, whether or not you have those qualities of independence and caution that make for a good judge.
Increasingly, you see dissenting opinions in the Supreme Court aren't quite as civil as maybe you might prefer. And is that of concern to you?
Yes, it's of great concern to me that our civil discourse, our civic discourse, is not civil enough. Aristotle said that a democracy depends on an open debate where you respect the dignity of those with whom you disagree. He said, democracies only live if they are sustained over a period of time by a thoughtful, rational discourse, a discourse in which you respect the dignity of those with whom you disagree.
Good morning. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. I'm Lizzie Burden in London, and these are the stories that set your agenda.
Taking you from the U.S. markets close to the overnight session in Asia. We'll walk you through what you need to know to kickstart Europe's trading day. Live from our European headquarters, we bring you the day's top market-moving stories, unmatched expert analysis, and on-the-ground reporting from across the continent. Tune in to Daybreak Europe, only on Bloomberg Television. Context changes everything.
Welcome to Bloomberg This Weekend. I'm David Gura.
I'm Lisa Mateo.
And
I'm Christina Ruffini. We're tracking breaking news today from Wall Street to Washington.
Introducing Bloomberg This Weekend, bringing a little Bloomberg into your weekend routine. Watch, listen, stream. It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. We'll show you what's happening in ETFs like no one else. ETF IQ, only on Bloomberg.
This hand, this knee, and this head are all small feats of engineering, decades in the making. And together, they're about to take a massive leap forward. Oh dear. Humanoid robots have exploded out of the lab and into the real world of late. Not always on the best footing. But I'm not just here to show you funny robot videos for the next half hour. Even though I could. Easily.
What's up, Rizbot?
Because behind silly hats and dancing is a very serious, very expensive, and very unproven bet that AI-powered robots could one day transform labor as we know it.
The interest in humanoid robotics has been there for a long, long time. What's changed, of course, is now we see that it's viable to commercialize this and start really applying some good business models. AI clearly plays a large part in this.
The hope is in cracking the code of physical AI, taking specialized artificial intelligence and putting it in a body with sensors, batteries, and actuators. Very expensive and technologically complex actuators. It's a paradigm shift that could set humanoids up to become a multi-trillion-dollar market by 2050. But for these massive figures to be realized, it won't be about party tricks or dance routines. It'll be about work in homes, in hospitals, in factories, especially factories.
When you really work with robots, you realize how challenging it is. There is a lot of what I sometimes call humanoid hype out there.
Like a lot of hype, coming from the most influential figures in the tech industry. But hype doesn't build a supply chain or rewrite the global labor market. To do that, you need, well, let's get into it, shall we? This robot runs on AI. Well, sometimes. For this demonstration, filmed in 2025, Neo needed some help from real humans and was operated remotely by a man named Turing. No, not that Turing. We'll get to that later.
You're looking beautiful today, Neo. If you hit your head, you okay?
This particular humanoid is made by a company called 1X, a robotics startup founded by this actual human, Bornick.
So this is Neo. This is the Gamma version. So this is what we've been doing the in-home tests among employees with. This is the one that's doing my laundry. And this is the last, let's call it like the last engineering version. The version that we're working on right now that's about to go into production is the unit that will go into the first customer homes. Essentially, the entire behavior of Neo is AI, in the sense that it takes images, forces, tactile, and in general, all the information that it has about the world in. There's a big neural network, and out comes the actual motor commands, all the way down to the forces and torques that it's exerting to be able to do everything from balance and walk to doing manipulation.
Unlike a traditional robot that's programmed to do a specific task the same way every time, a robot that uses AI should, in theory anyways, learn to do things over time in unpredictable environments. It's sometimes called physical AI, a category that besides humanoids includes other general intelligence robots and driverless cars. Basically, it's anything that uses motors, sensors, cameras, and AI models to make sense of the world around it.
We are seeing a very clear correlation between the amount of data and how many different tasks we can do and how successful we are at these tasks. And that is really the beauty of how AI has changed robotics, because there is no longer this limit where you need to write some specific code for every task. Everything is just data.
Let me introduce you to our robot.
1X is just one of many humanoid robot companies that have burst onto the tech scene in recent years.
You mind taking this wet towel from me?
Sure, I'll get the laundry started.
The frenzy comes down to two little letters, which come with big checks. AI.
The past few years, we've seen explosive interest in development of and investment in AI. And a lot of people are seizing on this moment as a way to work on all kinds of related things, including robots.
It's a packed scene with billions of dollars in investments in 2025 alone, and companies globally racking up huge valuations.
People are betting big on humanoid robots because very high-profile people involved in the world of humanoid robotics are talking it up.
People like this guy, Jensen Huang.
There's so many humanoid robots here, and the AIs that they need are physical AIs.
Chip makers NVIDIA are excited for their chips to power the brains of these humanoids.
It needs a brain, and NVIDIA has a chip for that can go into the robot itself. Then they have the software. NVIDIA has largely a monopoly for AI GPUs that go into data centers for training large language and other AI models. So they have a stronghold there because just like generative AI tools, humanoid robotics models, real-world models are also trained using the same technology.
We just announced a new deep collaboration with Boston Dynamics. They've got some very exciting...
Other AI and tech giants like OpenAI, Google, and Tesla are also betting big that there's a lot of money to be made by taking AI off a screen and bringing it into the real world.
And then you have Elon Musk, who talks endlessly about humanoid robots.
I think everyone on Earth is going to have one and going to want one.
His projections are even more, let's say, far-fetched. Elon Musk has said that Optimus, Tesla's own humanoid robot, will be a product that can bring in $30 trillion of revenue annually.
And with numbers like that, there's hype.
You increasingly see them showing up in ads. You see them at tech conferences. There are lots and lots of videos of them. Sometimes you'll see them operating in person, but they might be like tethered to something. So I feel like you're both seeing progress and you're also seeing this sense of it's not quite there yet.
Bringing you up-to-the-minute geopolitical news whenever and wherever it happens. I'm Jennifer Zabasaja in the Lesotho Highlands, and this is Bloomberg.
At 9:30 a.m., the market tells you what it's really thinking.
We beat the drum to the opening bell.
With deep analysis of the forces driving the price action.
Focusing investors on what really matters.
Where the money flows, which markets are changing.
Conversations with players shaping the narrative.
Innovative growth companies gravitate to NASDAQ.
It's not just like, let's buy the Mag 7 or AI.
That's a really compelling story.
This is where your trading day begins.
And this is Open Interest.
Only on Bloomberg.
This is my students in our lab here. We call it the Auto Lab for Automation Lab. And so students are working on various projects, and we have a number of robots in here. Two-armed robot, we call it bimanual.
Professor Ken Goldberg at UC Berkeley has been interested in what makes robots work for a long time.
In the last few years, there's been a lot of excitement about the potential of artificial intelligence, specifically with the breakthrough of ChatGPT, which is a huge paradigm shift in the field of AI. And so that's the speculation. What is the GPT moment for robotics?
But here's the thing. Large language models, or LLMs, like the kind behind ChatGPT, are more book smart than a robot smart.
In ChatGPT, you're looking at a string of words, and then you're trying to generate what would be the next appropriate string of words that goes with that.
ChatGPT and other large language models run on, well, mostly language. Think of it like having access to a massive library of trillions of words, photos, and videos from the internet. But a robot doesn't just generate words. It has to create motion.
In a robot, what we need to see is a string of images, a video, and then we need to see a string of motions, of commands that go to the robot arms to get it to do the right thing.
To do that, it needs data to learn from. A lot of data.
When it comes to humanoid robots, data is so important. Without data, a system that relies on AI doesn't know anything. If you want a robot to do something like folding laundry, for instance, you're going to have a ton of information about how laundry is folded so that it can learn, see patterns in that data. How do you pick up a piece of fabric? Do you use articulated fingers, which are extremely difficult to build? And how do you also hold on to things without squishing them?
Robots learn from experience. And here's the problem. Almost none of that physical experience has been recorded.
No one has captured the motions of robots that go with the inputs that were generated coming from a camera. So we have a gap, what I call the robot data gap.
That gap is a challenge and an opportunity, especially for the ones betting on physical AI. More data means better AI. The need for data for robots is so big, companies are rushing to create libraries made of both real and artificial synthetic data.
So people today are trying to collect this data to be able to train robots. The first one is simulation, to be able to simulate environments and robots moving in them.
Think of it like creating a hyper-realistic environment the robot can learn in. Its superpower is scale. Thousands of robots in thousands of worlds, all learning at the same time. The problem is, virtual worlds and virtual robots can lack real-world detail. Another way to train humanoids is harvesting existing video of the real world.
We do have a huge amount of videos on YouTube and other places that show people manipulating things.
But
it's very difficult to get the full three-dimensional structure of a scene from a two-dimensional video.
there is one option for delivering real human interactions in real-world conditions: teleoperation, where VR glasses and stylish outfits can turn these robots into a very expensive puppet.
So there's someone behind the scenes, behind the curtain, who is controlling two arms, moving them around, and as that happens, the video images and the motions of the robot are recorded, and that provides data. But that's very, very slow. But there are farms, people out there doing that as we speak.
Teleoperation has been criticized for its use in demonstrations to drum up excitement and money. But it's also a powerful training tool. Beyond teleoperation, there's another option: to let the robots just learn on the job. Goldberg calls it the flywheel.
As it's working, it's collecting data from its images and its motions, and then use that data by filtering it to train a larger model. And eventually, that new model becomes better than the original model.
Nailing an AI model and a training data set that works is paramount for any robotics company hoping to make it in the humanoid biz.
Neo's a robot for the home. We want every part of Neo to be inviting and made of materials that you would want to have around your family or in your living room. We're using soft cover and this fabric for the face covering.
At 1X headquarters, teams design, build, and train humanoid prototypes. Like many places, 1X uses a combination of training techniques, but when it comes to AI, things change fast. When we visited 1X in 2025, they relied on a combination of tools to train their humanoids, including teleoperation and human input. Hi, Turing. Since then, 1X says it increasingly uses something called a world model to train and run their humanoids, and it's pulling from many of those data gap-filling tactics. The video here on the left is generated by the model. It's almost like a future vision of what the robot should do. And on the right is the robot completing the action. Similar to other AI video creation tools, the world model pulls from a vast library of images and video to generate a visualization of an action. Each time it generates the prediction of an action, it can learn from the resulting real-world action, and, in theory, help improve those predictions with every generation. kind of like a flywheel, remember? Of course, the actual goal of all these models and data is to get robots out of the lab and into the real world where they can continue to improve. And when it comes to doing that, there's one place that's been faster than the rest. This is the first World Humanoid Robot Games, taking place in an old Olympic ice skating rink in Beijing. Look at all these humanoids. Running, jumping, dancing. Competitors here are gathered from all over the world to put humanoids to the mechanical test.
I think the games are really interesting. There's tons of really cool events that you don't really see normally. It's very different, very unique, very special. When I first met our robot, when I first interacted with it, it was a little scary because, you know, you have this like very heavy piece of machinery just running around and walking around next to you. Then you try to like keep your distance and stay away from it. But as I've gone to know it and work with it, I've developed a sort of like connection with it.
These games, which involve everything from boxing to football matches to, yes, work, are part of a large push in China to dominate the humanoid and AI robotics industry.
China's unique interest in robots has to do with the government for the most part. The fact that they see it as a strategic priority. Back in 2015, the Made in China 2025 plan had mentioned robots along with EVs and semiconductors as future growth drivers. So a lot of money has been poured into this area, and it continues to be so.
In 2025, China pledged 1 trillion yuan, about $140 billion to promote the advancement of emerging technologies, a big part of that being robotics. That kind of support has helped produce 140 Chinese companies, all making humanoids, a number that has continued to grow so much that officials have warned of a potential bubble. Still, China is currently dominating the humanoid robotics market, much like they've done with EVs. Companies like Agibot, Ubitech, and Unitree, among others, ship the most humanoids out of any country in 2025. That's down in part to some serious chops when it comes to manufacturing cheaply and quickly, which is a good thing if you're trying to get robots out in the world fast.
So much of the electronics industry has its supply chain from the sort of circuit level throughout China. And they have scale. Scale means better economics, and it means ability to move quickly.
It's really vertically integrated, just like with EVs. They have a lot of companies that make components for these humanoid robots, whether it's sensors, AI chips, batteries. The fact that they're able to sort of supply the components for these robots.
That advantage in scale may come in handy. China already leads the world in the deployment of industrial robots as it races against a shrinking workforce. But for engineering, training, and investment to pay off, they're going to have to do something more than backflips. They're going to need to get a job. Sorry, robots.
Do you think the dollar will remain the only reserve currency in the world, and are you as comfortable with the dollar as it used to be?
The dollar has been, as you say, a reserve currency for about 80 years. Actually, if you wanted to go further back, you could say it's almost after World War I, when the US had lent money to Europe and the UK for ammunition and so on, and then they had to get paid back in dollars, and that's when the strength of the dollar really began. So it's 100 years, 80 years, 100 years of dollar strength, so much so that important commodities, gold, oil, are denominated in dollars. Dollars are part of the payment system. When countries talk to each other, they represent their GDP and various figures in dollars. I think undoing that will take a long, long time. And, 3% in foreign exchange terms is not that much.
Okay, so you think the dollar will stay as the reserve currency of the time being?
Middle East
tensions are high.
Both sides willing to go back to the battlefield.
The narrative changes moment to moment.
Is there a ceasefire? Is there not a ceasefire? Markets are up, markets are down.
Count on Bloomberg for up-to-the-minute reporting.
Breaking news this morning.
Breaking news in the last few minutes.
On-the-ground perspective.
Talking to you from the bomb shelter.
This White House still pushing.
And the analysis you need to make informed decisions fast.
Clearly, nothing is final until it's well and truly final.
The really important question is whether we'll get second-round effects.
Nobody covers geopolitics like Bloomberg.
Welcome to Bloomberg This Weekend. I'm David Gura.
I'm Lisa Mateo.
And I'm Christina Ruffini. We're tracking breaking news today from Wall Street to Washington.
Let's introducing Bloomberg This Weekend, bringing a little Bloomberg into your weekend routine. Watch, listen, stream. U.S. jobs numbers are released. Bloomberg has the report under surveillance with crucial data and expert analysis at terminal speed. Nobody covers Jobs Day like Bloomberg.
I'm an economist, and I am studying the well-being implications of technological change. Technological anxiety and fear that technologies are going to take over our jobs is nothing new. What do we need to think about before deploying humanoid robots at scale would be worker involvement in the process. So how these robots will be deployed would have huge implications for the quality of work that people will have.
Robots aren't new. They've been in factories for decades.
They're very good at performing routine tasks and physical tasks.
Tasks like welding, painting, and assembling parts.
But they are not multi-purpose, and that's where the humanoids come in.
Basically, a humanoid robot is designed to do the tasks that humans can do. It's estimated that almost 2 million manufacturing jobs in the US alone might go unfilled by 2033. But if humanoids are going to be part of closing that gap, they need to actually, well, move and problem solve like a human, safely, alongside people. And right now, that's only happening in a limited number of very controlled pilot tests run by some very big companies.
For example, the BMW is currently running a pilot and is reporting early data.
Other big names testing these robots include Amazon and Hyundai. These trials are crucial when it comes to figuring out where humanoids work and where they don't. They also provide, yes, data to fuel development, while things like technology and regulation catch up.
We started with pilots in humanoids about a year ago.
This is Patrick Kelleher. His company is one of many testing out third-party humanoid robots in their warehouses.
We have been working with robots for the last 10 years, and we are at the forefront of piloting humanoids in our warehouse operations, and it really is fascinating to see the new technology take foot in production in the warehouse environment.
GXO has found some cases that humanoids might be useful for, like, say, working in a freezer.
We're able to deploy the humanoids in that environment where they can really work for an entire battery life, completing tasks, being directed by somebody who is outside of the freezer, and getting work completed without putting our teammates in an uncomfortable situation, working in that cold environment for a long time.
But there's still a lot they're not great at.
The humanoids so far are not perfect. They damage product, they drop product, they may put product back in the wrong location. It is so important that our teammates are working alongside of them to do that. There is corrective action and audits done to make sure that the activity done by the humanoid is done accurately.
Humanoids still face a number of engineering challenges that can create serious bottlenecks in a warehouse. They're slow, for one. They have limited battery life. And picking up a box or handling an object, things that we take for granted, require dexterity. It's something humanoids, which move using motors and actuators, have a hard time replicating.
We do not see humanoids in the next couple of years, taking away many of the tasks that our teammates perform. The tasks are too complex and too important from a quality perspective to go entirely to humanoids. And it's not really understood yet what the return on investment is going to be based on the finalized technologies that are coming out.
Places where humanoid robots might be deployed first, like factories and warehouses, are already built for industrial robots. But putting them in environments for people, like hospitals and homes, might prove to be the bigger test.
In manufacturing, you have a very fixed production process. You can shield off human beings, and you can let the humanoid robot perform. While in a hospital setting, it's a semi-structured environment. There are protocols and how processes should be done and how patients should be cared for, but still there are so many uncertainties that can arise. In fact, it's about life and death type of situations, and the costs of making a mistake are very, very high.
So will humanoids one day overcome their technical challenges, recoup investments, and become indispensable companions, folding our laundry, watering our plants, and building our cars? Or just be a novelty, giving way to robots of other shapes and sizes?
I've been in this field for 40 years, and it is fascinating to me how much it has had a resurgence again and again over the years. I'm thrilled about that. I'm excited because I feel that this field has got many years of questions and research that needs to be done. So in some sense, I don't want to sound discouraging. I'm very actually optimistic about the future, but I think it's important, again, to just be realistic about the time frame.
In the meantime, I'll leave you with this. A humanoid robot waving to you from a balcony as a drone pulls slowly and dramatically away. That feels like a decent way to end. For now.
Tariffs, I think, are probably the first time in my career I've had to deal with like a fundamental change in government policy in terms of how we think about how markets work.
The challenge, especially within my supply chain, is now how do you have enough productivity initiatives to offset the increased cost of all the product?
Can you just move your supply chain out of China and into the US, or out of Mexico and up to Canada? Is it that easy?
It's not that easy, but we do have flexibility. And we had been, prior to tariffs, prior to any of this, we had been on a journey to diversify our footprint out of China. So probably 2-ish years ago, roughly 65% of our toy and game volume was coming from China. Today, as we entered into 2025, that was around 50%. All we've done is really accelerate the path to get down to roughly, call it 30% by the time we enter into 2027. For us, I mean, if tariffs stay, if tariffs go, it's never good to have so much of your manufacturing base centered on one geography. We think the diversification is good. Vendors and suppliers up to speed, quality is a big deal, especially when you're dealing with toys and kids. It's not an instantaneous thing, but it's not also a 5-year, have to build a new plant from scratch.
We should not deny that change is coming. And change is not coming just in data centers and AI. As a world, we are building infrastructure, we're building energy, we're doing energy transmission, we're building next-gen manufacturing, we're ramping defense, and we're doing this thing called AI and data.
Yes.
We will see the largest need for capital ever. And that's what we've seen so far this year. And so now to your specific question, it's about underwriting. There are a number of very strong US tech companies who run diversified businesses, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, who are interested in seeing these centers built and are interested in not consolidating the debt on their balance sheet. And to the extent they are prepared to lend their credit, one can lend against those types of things and make sensible underwriting decisions.
It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. We'll show you what's happening in ETFs like no one else. ETF IQ, only on Bloomberg.
The world's most powerful investors don't ring a bell. They quietly reshape entire industries. This is the money shaping the world. The Dealmaker playbook where power and billions of dollars change hands every day. From private equity and credit to venture capital and M&A, we bring you the inside scoop on the biggest deals and debates, plus exclusive conversations with finance's ultimate insiders. I'm Danny Berger, and this is Bloomberg Deals. Every week, only on Bloomberg Television.
Bringing you up-to-the-minute space news whenever and wherever it happens. I'm Ed Ludlow at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, and this is Bloomberg.
Writing, living in this world, very strange things happen in this world. Very, very strange, inexplicable things. And that's what the beauty and miraculousness of this world consists in.
Amitav Ghosh, novelist and interpreter of the world, past and present. Do you have to work hard to separate yourself off from the real world when you're writing a novel like this one?
Yes, I really have to create a kind of little bubble of tranquility in order to be able to write. And that's becoming harder and harder. Before, we were writing about the planetary crisis, but now we are in a circumstance where we have to write from within the crisis.
From Bloomberg Weekend, this is the Michelle Hussein Show. Many novelists draw on the real world for their fiction, but for more than 30 years, Amitav Ghosh has developed a global following for deeply researched books, ones whose characters take you into the past or bring urgent present-day issues to life. He did that on colonial history, how the opium trade linked India, China, Britain, and America, and he's done it on ecological threat, with a series of novels set around the Sundarban mangrove forest on the Bay of Bengal. His latest is called Ghost Eye. It has a plot that moves between India and the United States. And that's part of Amitav Ghosh's own life story. Born in Calcutta, he now lives in New York City. And this conversation, too, goes to many places, real and virtual. It's lovely to meet you, having spent so many years reading many of your books. And here we are.
Thank you.
There's a part early on in Ghost Eye that made me wonder how autobiographical this book is, because your protagonist in Ghost Eye, Dinu, says, "My memories of the city of my childhood had ebbed until they came flooding back half a century later on the other side of the planet, in Brooklyn during the plague year of 2020. The reason those lockdown days reminded me of Calcutta was that during the pandemic, too, there was a sense of darkness closing in, or rather an artificial brightness leaking out of the world." So did your memories come back to you while you were locked down?
Yes, very much, actually. Writing this book helped me reconcile various things that I'd never thought about before. I was in Calcutta in January 2020, and my mother was very sick. And my mother was a very ordinary homemaker, but she was also someone who had very strange sorts of perceptions of things. Odd things would happen around her. And one day when she was in hospital, literally in front of my eyes, she had a near-death experience, And watching her describe what she was seeing on the other side, it really unlocked something for me.
What did she actually say? What did she articulate?
You know, the first thing she did was that she literally said goodbye to me. And my wife was there too. And she said goodbye in the same way and in the same tone that she used to say goodbye to me when I was going off to boarding school. And then her head sort of snapped back and she began to toss her head from side to side. And she was telling me in Bengali what she was seeing. There was a light, there were people coming towards her, very welcoming figures, and she was not at all afraid. These are all classic near-death experience.
People calling you.
That's right. And then suddenly, you know, a doctor came in and gave her this injection, and, you know, so she sort of came out of it. But, you know, the first thing she said when she came out of it is, "Why did you bring me back? I wanted to go. It was my time."
You've put that in the book.
I have.
There's a scene exactly like that in the book. So it obviously stayed with you.
And yeah, very much.
I mean, it does sound like an extraordinary thing to have experienced.
It was, yes. And as I said, it suddenly unlocked things, you know, in my brain. And I suddenly began to realize that, you know, writing, living in this world, you know, there very strange things happen in this world. Very, very strange, inexplicable things. And that's what the beauty and miraculousness of this world consists in.
And then a strong theme in Ghost Eye is this idea of reincarnation and a child who's born with memories of a past life. Where did that thought come from, and how long has that been percolating in your mind?
I've been thinking of it for a long time. In fact, I touched on it in an earlier book called The Calcutta Chromosome. I don't like to use the word reincarnation because there's a kind of metaphysic involved in reincarnation, you know, because you're implying that there's a whole sort of cycle of karma and so on. And maybe that exists. I just don't know about that. I'm agnostic. But what I do know is that a very large number of children are born with past life memories. Since this book came out, I've been contacted by, you know, literally dozens and dozens of people, very unlikely people. There are a lot of these inexplicable things like, you know, children being born with a knowledge of another language.
And you believe that? You don't, it's not people's perception, it's not artifice, it's not children putting it on. There's no doubt in your mind that that phenomenon is real.
No doubt whatsoever. Because, you know, the people who've told me about these experiences and memories and so on, they're friends and I trust them. And what incentive do they have to lie to me? I mean, and when there are so many of them saying that.
Yeah, I don't mean lying. I just mean that sometimes our perception does sometimes lead us to believe certain things or see certain things that someone else might not. I think the reason I'm particularly interested in your views on this is that I've always been struck by how in your novels, how deeply researched they are. The worlds that you create in fiction, sometimes you've mirrored them in non-fiction. So you've shown the real events that your characters were derived from. And that's why I'm wondering if you're doing something a little different in this book. You're asking us to suspend our belief and step into a different world with you.
Yes, very much so. Why this interests me, why this phenomenon interests me, is that I think one of the things that's gone really wrong with the world is that, you know, because of the mechanistic ways in which the most powerful people in the world think about the earth, you know, that it's just a machine, that it's inert, that everything in it can be known by science or by engineers or whatever. The world has lost all its wonder and its mystery, and that's why Elon Musk wants to leave our poor, you know, exhausted world and go to Mars or whatever. But our Earth is infinitely mysterious, and I feel that we know almost nothing about it. You know, science is great, but you can't use a hammer for every job.
The plot moves between Calcutta in 1969. It's the city of your birth, and New York in 2020. 1969 is, you know, in the West, in the United States, it's evocative of the Vietnam War protests. In the UK, it's probably more, that's when the Troubles in Northern Ireland entered a new era. What did 1969 mean to you as a 13-year-old in Calcutta?
In 1969, I was mainly in boarding school in northern India. I was following the news very closely, so North Vietnam and so on. But also, it was a time when really we in India had a huge kind of exposure to American culture through music, most of all. I think it was the spectacle of what young people were doing in America, I often think it's very common for American politicians to say that people come here for our freedoms and our liberties and so on. But in fact, really what I think the world found so attractive in that particular period was the counterculture.
Take me back to the real story behind the unrest in Calcutta that's part of the book. What was the political climate that surrounded you, and how do you think it impacted the writer that you became?
Very much. Calcutta, I should explain, was then kind of a hotbed of Marxist activity. There were Maoists, there were Stalinists. I mean, there were so many varieties of Marxist activists. And they were a very powerful presence. They were there as a political presence, but also as an intellectual presence. I never subscribed to those ideologies really at all, but still, it was there. You had to contend with it. And what made it very interesting in a way is that, Calcutta and New York are like the opposite ends of the telescope. I mean, Calcutta is the antithesis of the modern world. At least it was in that period, And New York is the heart of the modern world. So in a sense, it's such a huge gap to bridge. India, in some way, over the last few years, most of all, has completely lost its way diplomatically within the region. And it's very hard to see how it can get back on track.
Trading day is about to start.
And you're already looking for that edge.
The opening trade brings you everything you need to know as markets open across Europe.
Let's talk about the significant risk transfers to find space in their balance sheet.
Hedging some of that risk.
You could look at it the other way. Obviously, this stuff is risk-weighted.
I would much rather be long than be short.
We're in a kind of sweet spot.
Very, very strong alignment.
3 revolutions in one.
I'm Guy Johnson.
I'm Anna Edwards.
And I'm Tom McKenzie.
This is your opening trade.
Every trading day, only on Bloomberg.
At a time when policy in Washington is driving Wall Street, we draw a distinction between the rhetoric and the action, bringing you market-moving guests and original reporting. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Join me each week on Wall Street Week for stories of capitalism from business, markets, economics, tech, and climate.
More than what you need to know, it's what you need to think about.
You are a writer who's so connected to everyday events and to present-day politics. I can see it from your X feed. I can see that you're reposting multiple times a day. How much does it bleed into your fiction? Do you have to work hard to separate yourself off from the real world when you're actually writing a novel like this one?
Yes, I really have to create a kind of little bubble of tranquility in order to be able to write. And that's becoming harder and harder. It's becoming impossible now, I would say. Before we were writing about the planetary crisis. It's a political crisis, it's a geopolitical crisis, environmental, so many things. But now we are in a circumstance where we have to write from within the crisis. And that completely changes your perspective. I mean, you have to write from the point of view of the reality of our time, and it's a time of absolute disruption.
And you don't just mean climate, do you? I think you mean the state of the world, the war with Iran, all of these things are exercising you at this moment in time?
Very much so. I wrote a book called The Nutmeg's Curse, and there I said that the mistake that Western experts make when they think about the climate crisis is that they think of it as a technological and scientific crisis, whereas, in fact, it's a geopolitical crisis. It's a crisis that's tied to the fossil fuel economy, which in itself is the underpinnings and has been for 200 years of the Anglo-American empire,
Are you saying there's a link between that and Iran?
Very much So, absolutely, it's completely straightforward. I mean, the reason why Anglo-America has to try and retain control, most of all of the Straits of Hormuz, is exactly this, to control the flow of fossil fuels.
But other parts of the world, not least India, the country of your birth, is highly dependent on that. I mean, how closely are you following how badly India has been affected economically in this period?
I spoke to my sister in Calcutta a couple of hours ago, and people are desperate to find natural gas because, most of the cooking that's done in India is done with canisters of natural gas. And the situation is really very, very bad, and it's getting worse and worse. And the situation in India is actually very serious because the government, unlike China, didn't stockpile enough quantities of fuels. So India is very, very vulnerable at this particular
and has not
point.
been diplomatically active in this period, it would seem.
What can you say, India, in some way, over the last few years, most of all, has completely lost its way diplomatically within the region. And it's very hard to see how it can get back on track. I mean, just a few days before this conflict started in Iran, the Indian Prime Minister was in Israel, literally hugging Netanyahu and so on, despite the fact that these stands are not at all popular overwhelmingly in India by any means.
Can you say that for sure, that they're not popular, or is it more amongst your group of people?
Look, I mean, even if it's a question of it being popular or not, just prudence requires you to conduct yourself with a certain kind of caution in relation to the big suppliers of oil.
So how would you describe your relationship with both these countries that are part of your life, with India and the United States? Because this is where you live today. I presume it's where you feel much more at home today, but does some of that feel different in the midst of a moment like this?
Well, you have to remember that one doesn't live in a large country like the United States and India as if you were geographically spread across the entirety. I mean, I'm from Bengal. In Bengal, our views are often very, very different from that of other parts, especially of northern India. So, I'm influenced by that. And here I live in New York. I live in Brooklyn, and I have, for my mayor, a boy I've known since he was a kid.
You knew his parents. You knew Mira Nair, or you know them.
Yes, Mira is one of my oldest friends. We went to college together in New Delhi.
And so did you ever think that the child you knew might go into politics? Was there a moment where you thought that that's where his future might lie?
In our circles, it's so rare for anyone to go into politics, I mean, straightforwardly into retail politics. So we used to say to Mira, what is he doing? And Mira would say, well, he's doing it. But really, never would I have guessed that he'd turn out to be literally a kind of political phenomenon. I mean, a genius in a way.
What was the moment that you realized that he could go all the way in this mayoral race? Was it before he won the Democratic primary?
Oh, yes. I would say June or July last year. It was pretty clear. I mean, he just hit such a chord with young people,
Do you find yourself worrying, though, what happens if he can't deliver? Because he has inspired so much political enthusiasm. He has fervent supporters. That can just quite easily dissipate if people get disappointed.
The thing that's been really surprising for me, I mean, of course, we knew that Zoran was charismatic. He spoke well. He's got that killer smile and so on. What's really surprised me, though, is how competent he is.
So is that the thing that gives you hope, that you're living in New York, a city whose mayor you not only know, but, you have a great fondness for? And is that essentially your retreat amidst a broader political establishment that worries you?
Yes, but I think what that tells us is that there is a huge body of people in the United States, especially young people, who are now just longing for change. This project struck me as being very along those lines of thinking of time in a radically different way.
Is it a full book? Is it fiction or is it non-fiction?
I don't think I'm allowed to tell you that.
Oh.
The problem we've got as an industry is when the government's overtax, and let's say they tax at 30 or 40% of net gaming revenue, what happens is it starts making it uneconomical for the regulated operators like ourselves. And then the customers land up going to the black market, and the black market don't pay tax, do whatever, and there's no customer, there's no responsible gaming, and the fiscals of these governments don't collect any money. So it's finding a balance between overtaxing and then not regulating. Anything from 15 to 25% of your net gaming revenue paid on tax is probably the right number. And when you start going above that, the metrics start becoming a bit more complicated for lots of the operators.
Good morning. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. I'm Lizzie Burden in London, and these are the stories that set your agenda.
Taking you from the U.S. market's close to the overnight session in Asia, we'll walk you through what you need to know to kickstart Europe's trading day. Live from our European headquarters, we bring you the day's top market-moving stories, unmatched expert analysis, and on-the-ground reporting from across the continent. Tune in to Daybreak Europe, only on Bloomberg Television. Context changes everything.
Can we go back into history, Amitav? Because I mentioned this earlier in the conversation, and the fact that so often you've drawn on great moments in history, and and obviously history is full of difficult moments. And I'm thinking about your charting of the opium trade through your novels, as we're in this process where it feels like power is shifting, that there's a new world order developing. You've thought about India and China a lot for your writing. How do you think that relationship develops? Will India end up moving closer to China than the United States? Because the United States is a difficult place to be close to, difficult for its allies these days.
Absolutely. The problem for India goes beyond any one political party or any one political figure. What we are really seeing is an era of maritime power slowly declining, and continental power slowly rising to the top, as it were. China and Russia, Iran, they're the three continental powers now, Within this, where does India fit? India's problem is that it's not a continental power entirely, and it's not entirely a maritime power. Yet it is, in a significant sense, dependent on maritime relations. So where does India go? Its own geography puts it in this double bind, where it has to maintain sort of very close relations with the maritime powers, and at the same time, it has to try and maneuver within the new emergent order of continental power. It's a huge challenge for anybody to navigate that. And certainly, I think the current dispensation is not proving to be at all good at it.
The current political leadership in India.
In India.
It's interesting to hear you call Iran a continental power and not India one.
Well, India doesn't really reach very deep into the Asian landmass, It's cut off by the Himalaya, really. The northern India is, in some sense, very attached to the continent. But if you look at India, it's this huge peninsula that's just, jutting out into the sea. So that maritime aspect of it really has to be balanced against whatever continental ambitions India might have. And this puts India in a terrible position, because it's perfectly clear now that China is a world leader in so many different technologies, And Pakistan, which is in some way, maneuvered very well within this system.
It's having a diplomatic moment for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
I know that you've contributed a manuscript or you're in the process of contributing a manuscript to a really extraordinary project which began in 2014. It's called the Future Library. and books are being put away, not to be opened and read until the year 2114, which is an extraordinary idea. What made you want to be part of it, and how hard was it to imagine what people would want to read in the year 2114?
Well, you know, I think it's perfectly evident today that one of the factors that are really responsible for creating our planetary crisis is very short-termist thinking. We tend to think in like 2-year election cycles, 4-year election cycles, you know, that kind of thing. And this infects also the literary and artistic worlds, you know. There's a sort of pressure to keep up with the trend of the moment and so on. And when I heard about this project, it struck me that it was absolutely thinking of time in a completely different way. So you know how in Native American cultures and many other cultures as well, there's this concept of thinking 7 generations ahead. Anything you do, you have to consider the 7th generation. And this project struck me as being very much along those lines of thinking of time in a radically different way. And having to produce a text for that has really been salutary for me, to try and think of, you know, what can I have to say to a readership that's not yet born.
Is it a full book?
There's no particular specification.
But what did you do? Like how many pages? And is it fiction or is it non-fiction?
I don't think I'm allowed to tell you that.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
How did you even start to think what your contribution should be?
Well, of course, the first thing that you're tempted to do is to try and imagine the future world, you know. And I made many false starts. I tried that. And then I decided that that's actually a fool's errand, you know. I mean, if I think about how much the world has changed within my own lifetime, and that's obviously accelerating, it's impossible for any of us to have a sense of what the world will be like in 2114. And in fact, you run the risk of making an ass of yourself, because, you know, people will open that thing and say, oh, he was so completely wrong, you know.
So you discounted that?
I discounted that,
and
yes.
Thought instead that you needed to think of something timeless?
I needed to think of drawing on my own resources, you know, of saying what I need to say, really, rather than trying to imagine a world far ahead.
It is really hard to think about what will the planet look like? What will borders look like? You know, there might be nations that have even gone by then. So you're in the process of handing over that manuscript.
Yes, it'll be at the end of June. Yes, so I'll go to Oslo for that.
So, Amitav, to close, having written about past lives in this book, I mean, if I asked you to imagine what you would like to come back as, or the life you might like to have after this, what would you choose?
That's absolutely impossible. I don't know. Maybe I'd like to be a bird.
Or is there a place in history that you've written about or researched that, you know, of which your knowledge has been so deep that you have been able to really imagine living in that time or been drawn towards?
Yes. I mean, certainly I've researched the 19th century in India in very great detail. But I also researched the 12th century in India, you know, especially along the West Coast, where there were communities of Muslims, Jews, Hindus living together.
Pre-colonial times.
Pre-colonial times, yeah. It was a very beautiful time. I think I would choose that.
Amitav Ghosh, thank you very much. Congratulations on Ghost Eye.
Thank
and
you
I look
very
forward
much
to the next book.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you so much for having me. It's been a great pleasure.
As an exchange, what can you do to make it more attractive to be a publicly traded company?
Talk to our customers. We spend a lot of time with our listed companies, listening to their concerns, particularly the offices of the CFO, head of IR, listening to their pain points, general counsels as well, and then act as an advocacy group for those companies to really focus on structured reform to allow a company to tell their story in the most efficient way possible and reward them for the good disclosures that they are making in the market.
Is there any sort of financial innovation that you could drive to get more companies to list? Tokenization has come up.
Well, we did announce our tokenization initiative earlier this year. We already built the technology, we've already done a variety of proof of concepts. It allows for instantaneous settlement, 24/7 trading. It importantly allows for the rights associated with a share to move into that electronic form, but it is going to be a platform that runs in parallel to our more traditional exchanges.
From the world of politics to the world of business, Joe Matthew and Kaylee Lines deliver news, insight, and analysis live 2 times a day, every trading day. Balance of Power at 1 and 5 Eastern, only on Bloomberg.
Bringing you up to the minute geopolitical news whenever and wherever it's happening. I'm Anne-Marie Hordern in Caracas, Venezuela, and this is Bloomberg.
Oh, hello there. Just wanted to say, Primer is back. We've been scouring the frontiers of science and technology to help explain the difference between the next gold rush and whatever this thing is. And in season 2, we're upping the stakes. More danger.
Now that is some high-grade uranium mineralization.
We used to have a stable climate on this Earth. Right now, we do not.
More science.
We're pushing the envelope of technology in multiple directions. Software, hardware, chemistry, physics.
The cable is like very cold.
And more CEOs that can nail the photo shoot.
Hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars.
At stake. While the problems are economic, the solutions are too.
And yes, we will be talking about AI.
There is a lot of humanoid hype out there.
But our doesn't run on hype. It runs on innovation. Watch season 2 on all these lovely channels.
Technology is embedded in every aspect of our lives.
And laying the foundation for the future.
From finance to defense, AI to entertainment,
and from the road to the stars.
Bloomberg brings you the latest stories of the people and companies pushing the tech sector to new frontiers.
and the politics that shape global tech markets.